I'm Melissa Ledoux, a lecturer in the Engineering and Technology Department at Middle Tennessee State University, and my project for this faculty learning community is on student identification of ABET accreditation outcomes in a Mechatronics Engineering Capstone course. The Capstone course is where students prove they're ready to become engineers. It is a two-part course sequence where students design, build, and test machines they invent as teams. Our programs are accredited by ABET, so they must meet all student outcomes. While most courses must just meet one or two student learning outcomes, this course must meet all of them. So the research questions here are, 1, do students care about accreditation? Also, can students correctly identify ABET student outcomes in course assignments? And how do students perceive their skills in each student outcome area? These are the student learning outcomes directly from ABET's website, except for these bracketed text in bold that I just put to clarify each outcome. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over these, but you can see that most of the student outcomes target multiple sub-activities. So there's ample opportunity to devise assessments for each. Direct assessments are much more clear-cut than indirect ones here, but I will explain my approach to both. I gave the students a survey that included both direct and indirect assessment. Out of 56 students, 49 took the survey. First, I just wanted to see if students knew or cared about accreditation. In the class, direct assessment is done with multiple assignments for each student outcome that earn numerical grades. The survey evaluated whether or not the students could match the course assignments to the corresponding student outcomes. For indirect assessment, the students rated their skills in each area on a scale of 1 to 10. The good news is that the students do value program accreditation. 95% of students believe that ABET accreditation is important, and 100% believe that the course implements the student outcomes adequately. Here is how the direct assessment portion of the survey looks to a student taking it. They must drag the gray boxes listing the course assignments into the corresponding correct student outcome box. The students do have access to that list of student outcomes previously shown, but without the clarifying summary text. Here is the correct matching of assignments. So most of the assignments are quantitative or direct assessment measures because that's much easier to do for engineering. But the peer evaluations here in the teamwork and the lessons learned reflection and the learning and application categories are more qualitative or indirect assessment measures. You can see here that there are multiple assignments corresponding to each student outcome. And some of these are smaller assignments. So like here in the design, we have brainstorming, system flow diagram, market analysis, while pretty much one in each category is a more major assignment that is like the introduction design section of the report. So it is a section of their final project report, or like in the communication, it has to do with their final presentation. You can scan this QR code if you want to see a preview of the survey. Just do not click any answers in it if you are not in my class. Here is the direct assessment results. So this is a bar graph showing responses from students in part 1 of the course, which is ENGR 4580, and part 2, which is ENGR 4590. Most of the students in the class participated in the survey. So if here, the 60 to 70% of students correctly identifying student outcomes matching to assignments, if we put this as the acceptability range, we can see that outcome 6, which is the testing and analysis, is sort of on the edge within that range, while outcomes 1, 3, and 5, which deal with problem solving, communication, and teamwork, are all well able to match. Now, 2, 4, and 7 seem to be a source of confusion for students. So we will look at that a little more detailed. Also, you will notice that the red bars, which are 4580, the students in Capstone 1, actually guessed better on matching assignments than the students in Capstone 2, particularly on this part. And I think this is because the survey was given in the last week of the semester before finals. And so students in Capstone 2 were very close to graduation and pretty much checked out at that point. Now, this is a graph indicating the confusion and understanding. So we can see here on one of the horizontal axes is the guessed student outcome. And here on the other one is the correct student outcome. So the vertical axis shows the number of correct responses. So we can see that along this main diagonal is where we would want most of the responses to be, and that is the case. Now, these other shorter blue pyramids represent areas of confusion. So the largest area of confusion is where outcomes 2 and outcomes 4 were confused by students. And if you look at these, they do contain very similar language. So it is very reasonable that a student may have gotten these two mixed up. Now, the other two pyramids here that are noteworthy correspond to outcomes 2 and 7 being mixed up and 4 and 7 being mixed up. So here's outcome 7. An ability to acquire and apply new knowledge is needed, and this is not really related to the ethical and professional responsibilities or applying engineering design to produce solutions. So I'm not sure why the students would have mixed those up, but they did. So moving on to the indirect assessment portion, these are the average self-ratings for each student outcome. Criterion 3, the communication, was divided into 3 areas: written, oral, and visual communication, in order to better distinguish between those. Now, it's important to note that the students' abilities in these areas are built not only in the Capstone course, but throughout their education. So what we're seeing here is how confident graduating seniors are in their ability to perform as engineers. Now, this looks good, not too high or too low. Average ratings are all in the 7 to 9 range. Ratings that are higher than this, so if the average rating was in the 9 to 10 range, that would indicate overconfidence in abilities. And if the average scores were below 7, that would indicate a problem with the program. In order to gauge the distribution of ratings better, I checked to see what % of students rated themselves highly, which is 8 or greater in each area. So you can see that the parts where students were the most underconfident is oral and visual communication and testing and analysis. So this fits with my observations as an instructor. As far as the oral and visual communication goes, many students struggle making and giving PowerPoint presentations. And although the testing and analysis was lower, I believe this is actually higher than it was in previous years where testing was not as heavily emphasized in the course. So in conclusion, students do care about accreditation. As far as direct assessment goes, most students were able to correctly identify ABET student outcomes in course assignments, but outcomes 2, 4, and 7 were the largest topics of confusion. So as a result, I am now tagging each assignment with the corresponding student outcome so that future students will know why they are doing it and how it fits into the accreditation of their degree. The indirect assessment results were good overall. Most students had decent confidence in their skills, but the oral and visual communication and the testing and analysis were lowest. So as an action item, we should focus more on these explicitly in this course and in earlier ones. Thank you for listening. Do you have any questions?